Mr. Ocampo, thank you very much for inviting me to the Paris of South America. It is the capital of Argentina, a country around 8 times the size of my home country, Germany. And that's a country, some call it the breadbasket of the world, others the backyard of the United States. Yet it remains the land of rich culture, of powerful art, and the cradle of legendary footballers. And from here, on the margins of Western power, emerged the first human being to become, in a sense, the world's Attorney General, the Chief Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court. So thank you very much, Mr. Ocampo.
You know, I'm visiting my country. I don't live in Buenos Aires. My kids are here, so I came here. In fact, the house was my parents-in-law, the house. Argentina is a country of contrast. The dictatorships and the first trial against the commander. So combine both. That's why it's so complicated. It's a mix of barbarism and justice at the same time.
Honestly, what were you thinking? This was not a normal job that you had. It doesn't win you a lot of friends.
Well, I was 32. My country went to democracy. I was teaching in the university, and I was a clerk at the Solicitor General office in Argentina, and the prosecutor of the Argentinian military junta case needed support. And we knew each other from the university, so he invited me to join him. I knew that before that, many other people rejected the offer because they were afraid of the consequences. I was delighted. I was thinking, yes, of course, yes. So I was thinking, okay, maybe it's a risk, but while democracy is working, they will not kill me. And if democracy is removed, I have to leave the country, so it's better. So it's fine. So from that day, I took the office, and I learned, transform my mind. Prosecuting the top generals of my country, I really understood how important is to apply the law to powerful people. And I keep doing this for many years on corruption cases in Argentina, other military coup d'etat, other type of cases. When I prosecute the last military rebellion in 1991, and then I left, thinking, okay, I did my job. And for years, I was thinking, okay, I will never do something bigger. I could never have a bigger case. In fact, I learned with my training. So in 2002, I was parking my car in Buenos Aires. I received a phone call from the Jordanian embassy in New York telling me that the Jordanian ambassador was in charge to looking for a chief prosecutor for the newly created International Criminal Court. My name, because the junta trial was at the top of the list, and they want to know if I could have interest in the job. I was laughing because in those days, I was going to Harvard to be a visiting professor. I was very happy with that. I was thinking, they will never appoint me. But so I went to New York. I met the Prince Said, the ambassador. We have an interview, and I just keep doing. And 4 months later, they appoint me. And why I feel this institution was so important that contributing to establish it, for me, it was the best honor in my life. I was thinking, in some way, the International Criminal Court could be a moment of change for humanity in similar way than the junta trial was a cornerstone of Argentina democracy. Since 1985, we did the junta trial. Argentina has many problems, hyperinflations, president resigning, but no more coup d'etat. So, and that's what I was thinking, okay, we can establish this International Criminal Court, helping to stop massive atrocities. And that was my goal.
Okay, so how was it? You had an idea of that job the first day you come into the office. And what was different?
At the global level, I missed this political representation. There's no political leadership at the world level. National leaders, U.S. president, German chancellor, France, UK, Russia, China are the global leaders, but they are national leaders, not global leaders. So I remember the German Attorney General, she visited me, and when I explained to her my job, I said, "Oh my God, Luis, you are not independent. You are isolated." And that's it. That's it. So without the government, without the global government, the new thing, they created this International Criminal Court with no political support to control massive crimes. And that was the originality, the beauty, and the challenge. How to make this work. And my biggest shock was how this diplomatic world works.
How does it work?
No, there's no global interest. No, the nice guys, I remember the Minister of Justice of Canada visited me at The Hague. And she was very nice and told me in a moment, "Oh, prosecutor, how can I help you?" So, "Oh my God, Minister, you are making me cry. No one is offering me help." Okay, when you are going back to Ottawa, cross the street, ask a meeting with the top people in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and when they are there, please, you explain to them the meaning of the law. That would be very useful for me. And then the legal advisor of the embassy in The Hague, the Canadian embassy in The Hague, funny guy, poker face, say, "Prosecutor, very interesting comment. Next budget, 10% less." That is the way the system works. So it's hypocrisy, lip services, no one has really interest, but in some way, the commitment to do justice is adopted. And so the court is working and is forcing them to work. I remember one of the biggest challenge was when I had to request arrest warrant for genocide to the then president of Sudan, Omar al-Bashir. Many say were against me, completely against me. And so I was thinking, okay, if I do my job, the court will be in problem because everyone will attack the court. No one will support the court. But if I don't do my job, the court will be in problem too because we are not doing our job. So I had to do my job. So I requested a warrant. And in some way, what I learned is the world adjusted. So even countries who were lobbying me not to do it, they supported. So I learned that the court could mobilize states sometimes do not for it. No. So that's why my job was to establish the institution, create the policies, put the institution in motion. And we did it.
But what were the limitations?
Well, I feel that the big limitation were our own imagination. So I think we had the budget, I have independence, I do my job independently. So I try to do the best possible. I try to understand how to do the best cases possible. I try to understand how to respect scrupulously the legal limits and play smart. That's what I did. So in my time, our job was to establish the institution. Because imagine, I was appointed 2 months after US and UK invaded Iraq. So President Bush was campaigning against the court. So even the judges were thinking the court would be closed. So our job was to define the policies according with the mandate, recruit the best people we could. When I took office, I had 2 employees. I ended with 300 from 92 countries. Build the best possible cases we have in the most serious crimes. So that was my job. I was lucky because at the beginning of the 21st century, the world was okay. Russia and US both are demanding justice and controlling crimes. September 11 transformed that. But still, Russia was okay. China and US were not happy, but we managed to get US and Russia and China signing the UN Security Council referral of their full case to the ICC. And then, by consensus, China, US vote in favor the Libya referral. So, in my 9 years term, the court became part of the international landscape. The problem is, things changed after the Syria conflict. So, the Syria conflict broke the relationship between the US and Russia. Russia opposed the idea of President Obama to remove Assad. And that was the end of the harmony. And that's why Fatou Bensouda, who replaced me, and Karim have much more difficult time because there's less consensus around the institution.
But there are people who ask the question that why did you touch so many African leaders?
The crimes were basically in Africa and my jurisdiction. So people say, why I was focused in Africa. In 2001, there was a UN Security Council meeting on crimes and was on Africa. Because in those days, just in Africa, there were some massive crimes, and Colombia. And the reason I prosecute not Colombia, because in Colombia, the government of Colombia was conducting international investigations. So as soon the national authorities conduct investigations, I should not intervene. So I work in the African cases because in those days, the most serious crimes under my jurisdiction were in Africa. I had no jurisdiction in Iraq or US or Sri Lanka, countries who they had conflict, but I could not intervene because I was not a war prosecutor. I was the prosecutor of the countries that ratified the treaty. And in my treaty jurisdiction, the biggest crimes were Congo and Uganda. And I started with Congo and Uganda.
What about Libya and the NATO intervention?
Libya, until 2011, was not part of the court. In 2011, the UN Security Council took the decision to request my intervention in Libya. And they did by consensus. Imagine 2011, Russia, China, US, India working together to make justice in Libya. That was my time. My time was I was very fortunate. I was very lucky because it was complex, but the geopolitical of the world was in favor of doing justice. But that was the end. I left in 2012, and in fact, I left just in the moment that the world collapsed.
What were your experiences in terms of threats and danger? Can you explain and compare to what happened after you?
No. Okay. I never felt life threatens in my job. In The Hague was not a big problem. And when I was traveling to some countries where conflict, I had a big group of bodyguards. So I never felt my reputation could be at risk. When you are a prosecutor, people attack you for different reasons. So that's fine. But in my time, we managed to gain support. Then Fatou Bensouda had more conflict with the Israel-Palestine case. Because in my time, for 3 years, I managed Palestine-Israel conflict. I was thinking, okay, that's impossible. Palestine and Israel were not part of the ICC.
Yeah.
In 2009, was the conflict in Gaza, and the Minister of Justice of Palestine came to my office, Palestine was accepting the international criminal court intervention. And he explained to me how important was for Palestine the intervention of justice and how important it is that they are trusting the court. And I say, look, I understand the importance, but I cannot promise success. I can promise impartiality and respect for the law. And talking about the law, you have a problem. Because the law say a state can accept jurisdiction in its territory. And it's not clear that Palestine Authority is a state. In fact, the UN is not accepting you as a state. So you have a problem. And then the Minister of Justice was very smart. Instead to make to me political arguments, he said, it's fine. Let me brief you why you should consider Palestine as a state. And I said, public officers, I had to respect his right to brief me. I said, no problem. You will brief me as much as you want. And he took literally my words. He was briefing me for 3 years. And in the meantime, they prepared themselves to work in the UN to get considered state. They went to the UN Security Council. They were pushing. And they were moving. So Israel became nervous about it. And then it started to, at the beginning, they reject to involve with me. At the end, they engage me. We had conversations. But say, look, and US was, okay, that's probably the worst thing that happened in my time was light compared with today, because 2 US ambassadors were asking me to reject immediately the Palestine request. And I said, why should I do that? One of them said, because the US wanted. and in the other case, the ambassador asked me, you should close this, Luis. I'm not sure. I'm sorry. I'm not, because I promised them they would have all the time they need to brief me. So I remained silent. She remained silent for 3 minutes. We stared at each other. But at the end, when the president told me, we finished briefing you, I reject the case because, okay, in those days, the Palestine was not considered a state. The issue was solved a few months later. A few months later, Palestine went to the UN General Assembly, and more than 130 countries vote saying you are a state, and became a state not member of the UN. So from that day, the situation changed. That's why 2 years later, in 2015, Palestine became a state party of the International Criminal Court. And then 3 years later, in 2018, Palestine itself requested the court to investigate the crimes. And then a few years later, Fatou Bensouda requested to open an investigation. She was authorized. That when Karim Khan arrived to the court, the investigation was already open. That's why after October 7, Karim Khan could not ignore the biggest problem, because the ICC had jurisdiction in both. In the October 7 crimes, because October 7 were committed from Gaza, and then the hostages are in Gaza. So that's why he has jurisdiction on the Hamas people. And because Israel actions are in Gaza, which is a part of the Palestine territory, also ICC has jurisdiction. So it's a legal. So you see, everything is slower than you expect. You have apps, you push a button, boom. No. Yeah. International justice is complicated because it requires much more time, but it happened. So Palestine was adjusting and demanding justice for years.
So you say you had every tool to do your job, and just the world is more complex now and more difficult. And so that's why the ICC is struggling. I would say more than that. It seems that the ICC is on its deathbed.
No.
It seems.
No. It's ICC will not disappear. The relevance, what is happening, ICC could disappear in my time. Now it's established. They build a building of 500 million euros. So we'll stay there. No, because that is something people have to understand. After you build institutions and they are working, they are not closed. Relevance is a problem. Yeah. Relevance is a problem. So ICC's relevance depends on how national actors are playing. ICC relevance was huge in Colombia. Even, I always say, the best case I did is the case I never did. Colombia. In Colombia, it had a huge impact without opening a case. So, and then you have that full case where issue a warrant was complicated to implement President Bashir was traveling around the world trying to show he's defying the court, but in fears, a lot of fear, working a lot. That's why arrest warrants are a constraint to the global leaders. And in fact, it's showing the power of the arrest warrant, because at the end, Bashir was thrown out by a coup d'etat, and he ended in jail. And there were discussions on sending him to The Hague or not. So it took much more time than we expect. And there were moments, for example, Bashir was invited. South Africa, different times, did never invite Bashir. But once South Africa invited Bashir for a regional meeting. And Bashir went there to show I'm strong, but then had to escape to the back door because the judge in South Africa ordered his arrest. So that's the point. The arrest warrant create a weakness on these leaders. Suddenly, these leaders need political protection. Prime Minister Netanyahu is thanking Trump for protecting him. Duterte on Philippines is in jail today because Duterte, the Philippine president, made an agreement with the new president, Marcos, but they broke the agreement and then he ended in jail. So the ICC is there. Its relevance will be case by case. And as soon judges and prosecutors keep doing their job, there's no problem.
You say it's about relevance, but it's also about funding. And now we have, I think 2 days ago, UK said they want to cut the funding. We have sanctions from the United States. Israel calls it a farce. Hungary quit the ICC. Germany, the Chancellor of Germany, he's flirting with inviting Netanyahu, a wanted leader.
Well, all this is showing the importance of the ICC. It's creating controversies. Is the court in this moment where you have war in Ukraine, killings in Israel and Palestine, the court is not attacked, meaning the court is not doing their job. US and Israel are not parties. Chairman Chancellor said that, but then he was brief and he's not repeating his line because it's obvious if Netanyahu goes to Germany, a judge will order his arrest, as happened with Bashir in South Africa. So Putin did not travel to Brazil or South Africa. He traveled to Mongolia. But to go to Mongolia, he had to make agreements, giving the Mongolia president agreements on trade and money. So he bought his travel. So that's what you have to understand. It's much more nuanced and complicated. It's not so simple. And the fact that President Trump is attacking the court is showing the relevance.
Don't you see it as a big hit back when there is an investigation against Karim Khan? He has to go on leave.
Well, yes, because what's happening now, and that will be a different test for the ICC, the US is trying to use the same court to punish the prosecutor and attacking the judges. So in the US designated a sanction used against drug dealers and terrorists, the prosecutor for doing his job. It's funny, because the U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham was so happy with the ICC arrest warrant against Putin, but then so unhappy with the arrest warrant against Netanyahu, because for the U.S., justice is for the enemies, not for my friends. And so that's why the fact that ICC is clashing with the US is showing the consistency of the ICC. But people who want justice are not understanding well, and then I don't see a popular support to ICC because it's complicated. But maybe after this program will come, you will promote people. Hey, go to protect ICC.
I'll try. It was historic when Karim Khan sent his applications for arrest warrant. Very quickly, everything escalated because never before Netanyahu was a sitting leader of a Western allied democracy charged. Was it for you foreseeable that this will happen someday?
Well, what I see is a continuum, because when I request indictment against President Bashir, that was a big deal. How you can request a head of state to prosecute? But it was Sudan, not so big country. Then Fatou Bensouda announced that she would investigate eventually U.S. troops in Afghanistan that committed torture. And the torture crime was recognized by CIA. And even the U.S. Congress say torture was systematic in Afghanistan. So it's not that the crimes did not exist. So she said that. And the U.S. then designated Fatou Bensouda. Then keep escalating. Suddenly, Karim requests arrest warrant for President Putin, one of the 5 permanent members of the Security Council. Huge. And then he keep going up and go to Prime Minister. So what I see is the court doing the job in a world where suddenly we are back to the idea that war is permanent and war is a mechanism to manage conflict. That was a complete old-fashioned idea that is not possible in the world today. So the problem is not the court. The problem is states using war to manage conflicts. War is incompatible with 21st century. That's the problem.
We have a lot of difficulties with looking for truth because the world is full of narratives.
Yeah.
If you look at the ICC right now, there is this narrative that is very effective in terms of Karim Khan that was maybe spread by Israel. And that is that he acted because he wanted to distract from his own allegations. What do you think about it?
Well,
they say he heard about the allegations, then he started preparing the arrest warrants.
I don't believe we can do a new global system.
Yeah.
But in case by case, we should understand who are the main actors and how to create coalitions and alliances to transform the game. That is for me. And ICC is a critical part because ICC is the moral compass saying when it's crimes. That's why when Prosecutor Khan requests a warrant, strongly is against him. He was designated because he requests a warrant. And after, they tried to attack him for personal reasons. And I don't know the allegation against him. As a lawyer, I believe he deserved a fair process. And in fact, he accepted the fair process. Netanyahu is not accepting a fair process. So both for me are innocent until the judges say they're guilty. Can accept to be investigated, Netanyahu is not. But the main trick is, and it's not true, is the Khan requests a warrant for Netanyahu to cover up his allegations. Because people don't understand how complicated it is to conduct investigations. He was investigating Palestine since 2024, all the year. And in fact, in January 24, he submitted the evidence to a panel of 6 super experts, including an Israeli guy, Professor Meron, who was a Nazi victim and legal advisor in Israel. So who can doubt on him? So these experts had the evidence from January. And therefore, the allegations against him surfaced in April. So much after. Yeah. So, and he was ready. In fact, in March, he informed the U.S. that he will proceed. So it's the opposite. What I see is, okay, he's investigating from 2024. In January 25, he shared the evidence with the experts. He's investigating since October 7. 2024, big investigation. In January 2024, he provided evidence to the group of experts. In March 2024, he informed the U.S. And then the allegations appear. After he informed the U.S. he was going to proceed, allegations against him appear.
And there is one thing more that is fishy, and it is about the president of the Assembly of State Parties. There was a statement, and there was no formal complaint, but she identified him publicly, named him.
Well, state parties are small countries, and sometimes they are very influenced by U.S. So I suppose all the state party ambassadors were requested to do something, and if there are allegations against the chief prosecutor for abuse, he should be investigated, no doubt on that. So I suppose the Astromotive party has a role there, it's fine. The issue, which is, but whatever Karim Khan did, even if he did or not, that's nothing to do with the obvious crime alleged against Prime Minister Netanyahu. Because the funny thing here is the main charge against Netanyahu is not about the bombing. It's about the starvation. Starvation of Gaza people. And that is obvious crime. My friend from Israel privately accepted to me that, yes, we have nothing to say on that. Because it's obvious. You cannot starve civilians to win a war. And President Biden or President Trump could be witness because they are making efforts to provide food and water to these people. So the crime of starvation is obvious. And so there is no doubt on that. So that's why the issue of Mr. Khan should not be used as a cover of the brutal allegations against 2 million people victims in Gaza.
If you would be the chief prosecutor, what would you do in his role?
Look, I think Khan did everything fine. Khan tried to go to Gaza first, and he was talking from Egypt. Then he visited Israel. He met the victims. He went to Ramallah. He alerted them about the starvation as a crime, told them not to be surprised after if I proceed. Then he did the same before the Astromotive parties. And then, when it was December 2023, and then January 2024, he was very clever organizing this panel of 6 super experts, including Lord Fulford, a judge from appeal in the UK, Elizabeth Wilmshurst, who was the legal advisor of UK when she opposed the war in Iraq, Ted Meron, Aman Clooney. So 6 people who have a great reputation. They review the evidence, and the panel gave him green light. What else he could do? And in addition to that, 3 independent judges reviewed the evidence and rejected some of the charges, but accepted mainly all the case. So that's why Karim did his job very well. And my hope is, I understand he decided to step aside, not to use again the court the idea that he's doing new cases in Venezuela or new cases in Palestine to protect himself. So the challenge today is, while he is fighting his own case and cleaning his reputation if he can, the deputy prosecutor who are in charge of the office, now they have the responsibility to keep acting, keep going ahead, keep doing their job. As soon as they do the job, the court is okay. The fact that when you mentioned Hungary resigned, well, Hungary is a partner of Netanyahu and Trump, so it's a political decision. It's not about they believe there is no crime. No, they believe Netanyahu could commit a crime because he's my friend. Okay, goodbye. But there are 124 countries who stay there.
But now we have a secret war. It was a week after Karim Khan filed for the arrest warrants. There was a report of The Guardian that she was threatened directly by the director of Mossad.
Yeah. Again, showing relevant, because Who had to decide to open or not investigation in Palestine. That's why Mossad was focused on her. Fatou Bensouda promised to investigate Americans in Afghanistan, and she also started to review if she had to investigate British in Iraq. That created a lot of fear, and then when Karim Khan was appointed, he decided, okay, the investigation in Iraq, in Afghanistan is complicated. It's better to focus on new cases that could bring someone to the court. And then he transformed the focus on investigating the Taliban's crimes. And then he focused on the most important crime that happened in Ukraine. Ukraine aggression was obvious. And he was smart enough to do a case against Putin connecting him with something very clear, the removal of the kids from Ukraine to Russia. Very smart. Everyone was happy with Karim on that. Then he had to do the Hamas attack, and Israel answered, had to be investigated. Even you consider Netanyahu is innocent, should be investigated. No doubt. That's for me the point. I'm not saying Netanyahu is guilty. I'm saying Netanyahu should be investigated. And that is where the world is collapsing. The Western world is not, US is not helping. Europe is still there. Europe is still supporting. And South Africa make a big splash, and South America is protecting. So the world is still fighting for values. I think it's a big mistake to give Trump so much preeminence. Guys, no. The law apply in the world. I think it's part of that. We need to keep understanding how to do better, how to use a new system to investigate terrorism, how to end aggressive wars, how to invent something for climate change. That are real challenges. Not putting more money in the military budget who will go nowhere. So we need politicians understanding that. And that's what we should do.
Do you see it as we are entering a new kind of era? It's a secret war against justice.
Well, let's understand what is new is that is the global justice. That is new. It's like cell phones, no? When I was in the university, there were no cell phones. I remember in a class a few years ago, I told my students, look, when I was your age at the university, I did not use cell phones. And they asked me why. They had no idea. Guys, this did not exist in those days. Similar ICC. In fact, cell phones were created in 1988. ICC was designed in 1998, 10 years later, and implemented for the first time on 2003. So it's completely new. But in the same way, 20 years ago, Nokia was a cell phone. And then were others, and then iPhones is evolving. So what we need to keep doing, evolving justice. We need justice for terrorism. Because without a good justice system for terrorism, states are doing war to fight terrorism. And that's a big mistake. So we need to keep evolving. And that is the problem after I left my office, I tried to understand what I did. So I went to Yale. I accepted invitation from Yale and Harvard. I wrote this book. For 10 years, I was working on this book, Understanding Justice and War. And what I found is Harvard is not thinking on global justice. So the US is believing in war, not in justice. So so we need people from the South, not just complaining about imperialism. No, guys, wake up. We need to develop a new model to manage the world, including the North, and the South at the same time. That's why right now I'm working on Sao Paulo University, the biggest university in Latin America from Brazil, and we are working on how to use artificial intelligence to make peace. That's what we are doing, and that's I think the path. For me, Gaza conflict should be a moment that we learn how to do better.
Many things I could say about it. The first one is you say the South has to stop complaining about imperialism. I understand it because you victimize yourself.
Yeah.
But there is pressure. There are threats. And, we have examples of leaders who tried to break out of the imperial cycle, I would say, but they didn't survive.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
So, but we need to learn about that. We should learn about that. In 1951, the Iranian president went personally to the International Court of Justice to defend his country from UK, was complaining about the Iranian leader expropriate the Anglo-Persian oil company. And he won the case. And that's what was happening is after a few years, UK and US made a coup d'etat against the Iranian leader. Shah of Iran was appointed, and as a consequence, a decade later, years later, the Ayatollahs took power. So what's happening in Iran today, in some way, is a consequence of CIA and UK coup d'etat against the democratic elected leader in Iran. So we need to understand That's why, but this problem we should use to learn and keep moving fast. Also, you have good examples, no? Gandhi example, how to make a revolution in India without violence was amazing. We need to learn from Gandhi. And also the limits, because Gandhi could not manage Pakistan conflict. So that's why it's complicated. But that's why today we have great communication models, much easier than before. And we need to engage people to understand what is happening and basically educate massively. That's why I like you are doing this. Because it's a moment, it's not just about no one say the truth. The truth is what people believe. So what we need to do is really explain that war is incompatible with human life in 21st century. Do you know Fortnite? Fortnite is a video game where 100 people play and the winner has to kill all the others. So by definition, the winner will be alone. And that is the world today. The US has no plans to cooperate with China. In the US, they believe the only solution for China is a war with China. That is Fortnite. A war between US and China is the end of the world. And that's what I see. We need to educate people to understand, okay, to explain clearly and simple why what's happening in Gaza is not just happening in Gaza. It's about me in living in Uruguay or in Malibu or in Buenos Aires. So what's happening in Gaza is global. These conflicts are global. Whatever in Ukraine is global. So we are living in a global community. We need to build that, educate people on that. And we need experts developing the new institutions that we need to live together. Because that's civilization. Look,
but how will you change the superpower and the war mind of the United States? How can we educate them?
Well, let me present two examples of global change. We can be more. In the 19th century, slavery was a huge industry. Huge. So it took 80 years, but it ended. So there were treaties and the slavery was prohibited. There's still human traffic, but it's illegal. No one can do human traffic and be in the stock. No. For humanity's history is about colonialism. And colonialism ended. 1945, the UN Charter was basically the end of colonialism. So the world changed. And that's why in 21st century, with all this technological innovation, we had to use it to keep transforming. The problem is, it had to be a change coming from citizens and the South, not from the center power. In the school, those who are doing bullying are the biggest guys, the stronger guys. Okay, the weakest guy had to play together. That's the concept. So
what you are suggesting is we have to change the structure because we have the IMF, we have the World Bank, and we have the trade organizations, and we have a lot of institutions that are dominated by those big powers.
Yeah.
Even the United Nations with the veto rights. And how can we change that?
Leo Tolstoy, in War and Peace, explained, change are produced by those who participate in the events. So my idea is we need to use artificial intelligence to promote understanding how to participate in the event. One example I can give you, you're right, UN Security Council has 5 countries with veto power. They stop whatever they don't like it. But in my life, I saw the UN Security Council with Bush totally against us, adjusting. Why? Because in 2005, the French ambassador was pushing the Security Council to refer the situation to the ICC, Darfur situation to the ICC. Therefore, he immediately got the support of 9 countries, all of them ICC members. They were called the 9P. And basically, France could lead these 9 countries to force US to accept the referral in a moment of total hostility against the court. So how to do that? Okay, we need small and medium countries understanding, but we need people connecting that. So we can do much better. So I think it's a lot of space to do it. I believe that's my job. My job today is try to explain to the new generation, giving them information, and they should use new technologies to spread the message. No?
You said we have to use artificial intelligence for creating peace. But, as a journalist, my first reaction is internally, who is controlling? Who is regulating? Who is funding it?
Well,
will it be free?
Well, we are doing that project in Sao Paulo University. So Sao Paulo University is doing that. And the main idea is not to replace institution, it's to make the institution to work. Help people to use the current institutions. That's the job. So help to create collective action. And people say, oh, it's naive. What is naive is do nothing. That's naive. Because if we are doing nothing, we're in a Fortnite system. Our children, our grandchildren have no future. So it's complicated, yes, but we should try to do it properly. That's our job. That's why I'm very glad that you make this long trip to just visit me. That's that type of effort we need to do.
You once said a world that sees friends and enemies is a world at war with people. A world of tribes. What do you mean by that?
Well, for 5,000 years, tribes and groups of people were fighting each other to manage conflict between communities. So tribes, empires, kings had no problem to kill enemies. The idea of permanent peace for 5,000 years, peace was just the time between war and war. Peace was not permanent. And this in 1648, the permanent peace of Westphalia, an agreement, ended the 80 Years' War in Europe that devastated Europe. And then, in that moment, started to use diplomacy to end war. And in 2003, started the idea of a permanent court to do justice in the world. So these are tricky moments. But you see, there's a very old system using war to kill each other, and a very new system using justice to control. And both are happening at the same time. That's why people feel, what is this? It's not chaos, it's complexity. We are living in a complex world. But it's a new system emerging. Because your generation, young people, they believe in the world, in humanity. My generation is national. The new generation is global. But still, they have to understand, okay, guys, what you inherited, some peaceful time, is not the air. You have to build it. And you have to build your new technologies to make peace a permanent system. And that is a challenge.
But it seems, if I look at the world, that the world is becoming crazier and crazier. And we don't have a real moral compass. And it seems as if we just are doomed to watch everything. We cannot do anything.
Look, we should not accept the abnormal thinking destroy the good values. There is no war between the majority of nations in the world. Most of us live in peaceful situations. So war is not global. There are very bad conflicts in specific areas supported by Russia or US or Israel, different big countries. And we should do two things. Protect region from war and help to manage crazy conflict like Gaza or Ukraine. For instance, Latin America, there are no wars between states in Latin America. Zero. So it's a region of peace. We should keep it peace. There are conflicts with organized crime. That's a different challenge. We should develop new technology for international crime, criminal organizations. So there are conflicts in Africa, more and more. that's a different problem. So we should understand the regions. But if you're thinking, there's no conflict in the U.S. between states until now. But in the 19th century, there was war between states. What happened? The federal government is managing the conflict between states. In Europe, until few decades, there were permanent fights between UK, Germany, France. No more. Why? European Union. European Union is the model to harmonize European states. But with Russia, instead to integrate something similar, they keep NATO. And NATO is a military alliance. NATO is war. And now, because NATO, all the European countries are giving the budget to the weapons industry. Yeah. That's insane. Germany had no more, in 50 years, will no more money for hospitals, education in Germany. So that's insane. I'm shocked the Green Party in Germany is supporting war. Guy, what's happened with you? No.
It seems that if we're stuck in that war and we are forced to send weapons and be complicit in Israel.
We're not forced. We are just following a stupid idea. Look, first, the stupid idea was not to appease Russia conflict. Russia was begging not to expand NATO to Ukraine and Georgia. And the stupid European countries, when America was pushing to include Georgia and Ukraine, Europe say they will be part, but not yet. So that was stupid conclusion. And in fact, when people say, okay, it's naive not to understand Putin was not able to control Ukraine in 2 years. How Putin will get Poland or Germany is stupid. And if you prepare for war, what you will do is Trump invade Greenland. So what Europe will go to war with US? Come on. Europe was leading the world with the European Union and the ICC. It's time to go back to these ideas. That's why this conversation in Germany is so important.
Yeah, when I say we feel forced to do that, send weapons and be complicit in both conflicts, Israel and Palestine and then Ukraine, I ask you, do you think that Germany or Europe is independent?
No, in my feeling is Europe is very dependent on U.S. policy. It's like a syndrome of the Second World War, where U.S. saved Europe, and now they have the syndrome to follow the U.S., UK very openly, and the US also. So there is no independent plan. There is no independence. And Germany has this guilty feeling with the Jews. So all these factors are mixed. And one of the problems is, it's funny. Yes, decades ago, it was very clear European Union was a mechanism for peace in Europe. Okay, guys, that's the idea. There are no wars between Germany and France because European Union. So keep building coalitions, keep building federations. In fact, the ICC is that. The ICC is a federation of 125 states united by same goal, not geographically united by the goal to end the impunity for the worst crimes. And that's keep supporting this idea. That's why yes, we do a lot to educate people on that. But it's fine.
Yes. So we have these two big conflicts, and it seems as if we're moving towards a conflict with Iran. Do you see that coming?
Well, I believe Prime Minister Netanyahu escaped with that. So Prime Minister Netanyahu needs a war with Iran. Yes. But maybe Trump is making a deal. You know, Trump does not believe in law at all. It's clear, no? President Biden say he believes in law, but not against his Senate, against his friends. So that's two different positions. But basically, at the end, law is not. The U.S. is not helping to implement law against friends. But sometimes I remember, Russian leader who say, "Look, we like Reagan to make a deal because who will believe Reagan is a communist?" So sometimes the most extreme person make a good deal. I don't know if that would be the case of Trump. I don't know. But for me, it was shocking. I remember a year and a half ago in Los Angeles, when I was living in Malibu, I was invited for a lunch with the Deputy Minister of Defense of European country. I asked him, okay, what's the plan? What's the plan for Ukraine? And he told me there's no plan in Europe. And what do you expect? Well, we expect that at least half of Ukraine will remain on the West. And why not make a deal? We cannot make a deal alone. So that's the weakness of European countries. The U.S. is driving them, and the U.S. is a business. You calculate that. How many economic incentives is for war? The billions dollars spent on military equipment, and the incentive for peace. Where are the incentives of peace? That's why we need to understand that and start to be creative. But that's why, for me, the slavery example is a good example. There was no chance to end the traffic of slaves, and it happened. And it was a coalition. It took 90 years, but it happened. So it's a time to be clear. The 21st century requires no more wars to manage conflicts. We use justice to manage violence. That legal architecture is almost invisible, but it is a matter of life or death. So we need to be strong and start to understand that. The problem is the U.S. academic world is not focused on that because they are the biggest country in the world, so they don't believe in other mechanisms. They believe in war. They believe in the military power. So we need people from outside designing these new technologies.
What would you say if a war with Iran starts? There are some people who say there will be no domino effect. There will be no world war. How do you see that? How dangerous could it be?
Well, the war produced revenge. War produced revenge. Justice not. We are playing with fire. It's insane. It's insane. During the Cold War, there was a clear feeling we should not have open fire or this type of conflict. There were civil wars, but now we are exploring this fight between Iran and Israel. Is insane. A war between U.S. and China is insane. That is naive. Believe that the humanity has a future with war is naive. That is naive.
They say that power corrupts people, and you went after the powerful. Would you say that there are some traits in character, some inequalities that protect you from getting corrupt?
When I was young, one of the generals in my country took me aside and there to explain to me, say, Prosecutor, I want you understanding me. We're doing what we did to protect our freedom, our democracy. And I said, General, you cannot tell me that you torture and kill people for freedom and democracy. And he said, those are our values. They are the enemy. As soon as you consider someone is an enemy, you can kill him. If someone is a criminal, you cannot kill him. The criminal has a right for a fair trial. That's, for me, the crucial issue. That's why the legal architecture is invisible, but it's a matter of life or death. If you're an enemy, the law says you can be enemy combatants could be killed with no legal procedure. A criminal should be investigated and prosecuted, and maybe you can execute after judges decide that. So that's civilization. So the problem is we treat foreigners as enemies. The Israel concept of defense include we cannot win the hearts and minds of the terrorists because they hate us. So when they attack us, we attack them with disproportionate force. That's the policy. And we are not understanding that.
So what would you suggest to Netanyahu? What should he do now?
Investigate the criminals. Look, it's insane. There is public information which is a Turkey company providing money to Hamas to buy weapons. And we are not conducting criminal investigation against them. Turkey company is still working. Turkey company is still in the stock in Turkey. Turkey company is still receiving money from Turkey government. So, and as soon they continue giving the money to Hamas, you bomb and to kill whoever is in Gaza, Hamas will continue working. Hamas is organized crime. You cannot defeat organized crime bombing people. That was U.S. learned in Vietnam, in Afghanistan. Okay, we are not learning, but U.S. did it. U.S. bombed Afghanistan and lost. Israel bombed in 1982. Israel went to Lebanon, killed 70,000 people, but removed Fatah al-Arafat from Lebanon. But Hezbollah was created. So the idea to win against terrorists with war is historically wrong.
It should be like that Israel or the United States, they should pressure the Turkish government.
No, they should do criminal investigation and prosecute whoever is providing money. And if the president of Turkey is involved, Turkey should be prosecuted.
Okay, that would be easy. But why are they not doing it?
Because they use the paradigm of war. They are using the paradigm of war just kill the enemy. I understand them. I always remember the Israel Deputy Minister of Justice, after I left, he told me, look, we recognize you were impartial. But for us, impartiality is not enough. Because I have the life of my 7 and 10 years old kids at risk. I don't like to put the life of my kids in the hands of an impartial person. I like a partial person. I understand his rationale, but I understand why Israeli people believe the only way to protect ourselves is to kill all the Palestinians. But you know what? I understand you, but it's not working. I need to warn you, it's not working. It will be much worse. Much worse. We need permanent retaliation against you. Yeah. So the Arabs will react.
There is one thought. Maybe there have to be wars. There is a system of circulating of weapons, and maybe it's by design part of that system that you are not solving the real problem, but trying to kill the symptoms.
That's why I believe we should stop war. We should stop. War should be stopped. War should not be a mechanism. We should stop the idea to have national armies. We should invent a global model to have no more wars between states. You can accept national armies to defend the country, but not to any aggression. And that's the problem. It's not just Trump. President Obama received the Nobel Prize in 2009, and he promised, he first said, I recognize Gandhi and Luther King, but I cannot follow their example. I'm the commander-in-chief of a country in 2 wars. I demand that I will do wars whenever I think is necessary. And I believe in not just defensive war, who are legal. I could do humanitarian wars, who are completely illegal. He proposed to do humanitarian wars, as he supposedly did in Syria, was humanitarian war, because half the population is displaced. And the worst thing is, he received Nobel Prize for that, with that speech, proposing war, and people clapped him for 1.5 minutes. So, it's wrong. I like Obama. He's a very nice guy, very smart. Wrong on this, because it's a professional constitutional law. He believes in national system, not in global system. That's all thinking. We need people understanding, we need a global thinking, and we need to build institution for that. And that's what you should do. I was the first global public servant, independent. Because the UN people are not independent. They rely on states. I was independent. So I saw problems that normal people don't see. And that's why my feeling is, okay, before you die, try to help other people to understand what your experience. Try to help others to understand and see what happened. And it reduced my frustration. I had no frustration because, yes, I can do a lot. I can help, I can meet nice people like you coming from Germany because you like something I say. You decide to come to see me, to interview me. People could decide to read you and follow you. So each of us has agenda. We can manage our own agenda. And that's the job. Protecting our kids is not just sending them to good schools. We need to protect them from this crazy world. We should do it. And it's a time to do it. It's a very interesting time to fix the world.
Thank you very much.
When I saw your video, I love your video. You did very well the video. You managed that. You already did. Did you edit the video?
Yes, I edited myself, everything. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Please. It's great. It's fantastic.
You can stop now, the recording.
It's okay?
Yeah.
Is working?
Yes, it's working.
Do I do it again?
No.
So,
Let me see.
when are you going back?
On Friday.